Welcome to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, where you can listen to your favorite performers talk about their career, how they got started, and everything in between. Make sure to follow me at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha on Instagram and also my main Broadway account at Broadway_Corner for updates on new episodes. Hope you enjoy! Hi everyone, welcome back to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. I am so happy you are here, and today I'm speaking to one of the stars of the Broadway show K-pop, and he is 1/8 of fate and has perfected the smolder. It is John Yee. Hi,
Hi,
John.
hi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for asking.
Yes, and for some background, John has been with K-pop for 8 years. He's the OG, since the first workshop in 2014. And in 2017, John originated the role of Bobo in the Off-Broadway world premiere of K-pop at Ars Nova. John has toured with Cinderella and Miss Saigon, and a few of his TV and film credits are Kaleidoscope, the other two, Mr. Robot, and Over the Moon. And in 2019, John made his public theater debut in Soft Power. You can hear John in the original cast recording of Soft Power featuring a book and lyrics by the legend David Henry Hwang. And last year, John finally made his Broadway debut, originating the role of Danny in K-pop. And since we were supposed to be kind of wrapping up with the album now, but it is now now set to release May 12th, 2023. So hi, John. It's amazing to see you again. The last time I saw you, it was the panel and at the last show, and I was also crying quite a bit. So so nice to have you here today.
It's so wonderful being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to just start off, I mean, just talking about you, like, when did you begin performing? Like, was it something you discovered in very young in life, or was it something that came into your life a little later?
I began performing as a really young child, in my parents' living room, just singing and dancing. And I was always very, very expressive and artistic and very vocal, and I loved to sing a lot. And it wasn't until middle school when I started taking dance classes. And to backtrack a little bit, my father owned taekwondo schools growing up. So like I had from a very early age, I was able to gain a keen sense and awareness of my body and sort of like movement. And I really think that helped sort of like orient me towards being movement oriented later on. And I started taking dance classes in middle school, and then I was cast in my first high school musical, Oklahoma. I was Will Parker. Um, Thanks, Mr. Parson, who cast me in my sophomore year of high school. And that doing that production and being a part of that theater community ignited my love for acting and musical theater. And the ball started rolling from there. It was sort of a snowball effect of me continuing to be in school musicals, joining high school choir, eventually applying to musical theater schools, eventually getting a BFA in music theater in college, and then moving to New York.
Mm-hmm. And talking about going to college for theater, I am currently in the college audition process. I've been accepted to a few places, and just
Hey.
such a stressful time. Just be, trying to make your dreams come true. And I know you went to Elon, and so since I'm in the process, like, what was yours like? Did you go to Unified? How many schools did you apply to? Just why did you end up choosing Elon?
That's a great question. I did not attend Unifieds. I had a very, very select process of sort of deciphering what type of school I wanted to go to. I mean, it started from the basis of conservatory versus liberal arts. And I knew that the conservatory style program it just wasn't for me because I was interested in getting a full liberal arts education. And so from there, I started looking into schools that offered conservatory style programs within a liberal arts environment. And I loved Elon because it was close to Atlanta, Georgia, where I grew up. It was also, I mean, the whole campus is a botanical garden. And it's sort of secluded. And I loved the faculty. When I had my school visit and I auditioned, I just sort of loved the culture there. And I loved that it felt like you were sort of immersed in nature. And that it was sort of a very down-to-earth program that I felt very comfortable in and could see myself thriving in. And so I was also a part of several fellows programs there that allowed me to explore other aspects of my academics that I was interested in. For example, I was a part of a leadership fellows program, which eventually someone who had a relationship with the Leadership Fellows program recruited me for Teach for America shortly after graduating, which is how I entered the Houston core of Teach for America right after undergrad for 2 years before moving to New York. And so Elon just sort of offered the full platter of everything I was looking for. So I was able to get a conservatory style training program that offered, equal parts training in acting, music theater, and dance, but also allowed me to fully experience the sort of collegiate level of types of classes I was interested in taking.
Mhm. Yeah, I know Elon is definitely one of the big ones that a lot of people, really look up to. And my dad grew up in North Carolina, and so one
Oh,
time when
wow, what city?
there, it's called Red Springs. It's this very small town, ridiculously small, like barely any people, but family in Charlotte or Raleigh, and so we passed Elon before, and I was like, hey, there it is. Uh, and
Yeah,
even oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's just so many options. So I welcome to New York. You will be hearing lots of honks on our call today. But my encouragement for you, that's unsolicited, but I'm just gonna say it. I hope that you are able to find the right fits for you, because there are so many choices.
Mhm.
And I want to encourage you to like not settle for a type of school that you might feel pressure to go to. You have so much at your disposal and you have so much available to you that I hope you'll be able to find the right fit for you, which I have no doubt you will. You're extremely talented and intelligent, and I know it's a stressful process. So just keep your head up and you'll get through it. It is incredibly stressful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when I saw K-pop, I was about to hear back if I got into NYU for early decision. Did not
Mhm.
happen. So
That's
after
okay. That's okay. You
that,
move on.
just pick yourself up and continue auditioning. And so yeah,
That's,
I'm really looking to into a lot of programs like in the city just so I can
mhm.
keep up on my training, but also do things like podcasting, but do it in
Of
person maybe.
course.
So yeah, thank you so much for all that advice. Yeah, school is such a unique thing, and there's only one good fit for one person. So, just trying to figure that out.
And
Um,
it'll all fall in line and it'll all come together. And I know it's in this time right now, there's so much pressure that you put on yourself.
mhm.
Um, and so I hope you find time to, rest and relax and enjoy the process, because you will find the right fit for you and it will happen. And I hope that you don't stress yourself out too much, but I know what it feels like and it is incredibly challenging and very stressful. So
Yeah, I don't even know how to sum it up into any words.
yes,
Um,
there are no.
but to talk now about K-pop, why we're both here. How did you first get involved? I mean, you are the original of the originals, when it comes to the cast. And so since you were a part of the first workshop, how did you get into that?
I was invited to a dance call actually in 2013, 14, 2014. Yeah, it was like March of 2014. This was like 6 months after I'd moved to the city. My
Mhm.
agent at the time sent me a dance audition for what was then called K-pop. I don't know if it had, I think it was just a working title. And so I told my agent, I was like, really? Like, what is this? Like and I will never forget what he said. He said, if it is something that interests you, just try it, go in for it, because you never know where a show can end up. This may very well end up on Broadway someday. It might not. It may. You just don't know. So if you have the slightest interest in it, go for it. And I'm so glad I did, because it was a dance call with Jennifer Weber, and I think there were like 9 or 10 other guys there. And so we did a dance call, and then I sang for the creative team at that time. I remember Jennifer Weber and Teddy at the table. There were probably others, but it was so long ago.
Mhm.
Then we had a workshop slash presentation for this abstract idea of what was K-pop at that time. And it was at the time just sort of a concept of these songs with Mui and a girl group and a boy group. And we had presented like 2 songs each. And so that was my first experience of K-pop, and that was the very first workshop of the show. And I think the first workshop, the boy band was like, it may have even been more than 8 guys. I should go back to the OG photos, but there were like 3 girls in what we know as Artemis now. There was a
Mhm.
full artist Mui, and then the guy group. I want to say it had like close to 8 or 9. And
Mm.
then originally 12 composers on the show. And then it eventually came down to Jason and Helen, who, contributed the music and libretto for the show. But I shortly went out on Cinderella afterward, and K-pop repeatedly asked me to be a part of the workshops. I would put in requests to leave tour. They would get denied.
Oh,
Because the management company was like, you can't leave to do a reading. And I would have to go back to K-pop and say, I really am so interested in being a part of the project. I loved the first workshop. I'm still I've continued interest in the project. However, I just can't leave a full-time tour job, a
mhm,
first national tour job for a reading. And luckily the creative team was so understanding, and they never, felt some sort of way about that because they knew I was working. So yeah, that was my original experience with the show. And then when I came back from tour, Ars Nova was putting up the Off-Broadway production, and then I auditioned for that. And then we did the workshop for the Off-Broadway production, like after that workshop, like 6 or 7 months after that. So that's sort of my brief history with the show.
mhm. Yeah, and do you remember, like, what Fate was called or what Artemis was called, like, all the way back? Because it was Special K for Ars Nova for Artemis and then Fate still, but was there ever a different name if there wasn't, like, 8 members?
I'm sure there was a different name. I don't remember. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, there have been so many different iterations and versions and evolutions of the show, to
Mhm.
where it was so gratifying and almost relieving when we got to Broadway, because I could, when we froze the show, I was like, okay, this is it. Nothing's changing. Because it would
Yeah.
always change. So I'm sure there were names for the boy band other than Fate before that. However, I do not recall what they were.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's had such a long journey to getting to Broadway because, getting a Broadway show is hard to get it
It is.
up and
It takes
running
a long
and doing all
time.
this
And
stuff.
I know that at Off Broadway we were called Fate, but there were only 5 members,
Yeah.
and that something happened to the 3 other members. Like
Mm.
one went to the army. Forgive me, Jason Kim, if I'm saying all of this incorrectly, but one went to the army, and then others left, like for various reasons, and that
Mhm.
there were a part of the storyline was that there were only 5 of us remaining.
Yeah. No, and for people who are listening who did not know, back when there was only 5, every single person in Fate had a name that started with a J, which, like, I did not even it's John, and then Jason, and Jumin, and Jiho, and then Jinyu. So,
Oh
like,
my
5
gosh, that's
kids.
true.
Yeah, no, I realized that, like, as I was looking at pictures, I was like, "Oh my god, everyone has a name that starts with a J." And, like, in the Broadway production, I think it was, like, maybe 4 or 5 still remaining J names,
Wow.
adding, like, Joshua. It's
Wow.
it was such a funny, like, revelation. I was like, "Oh my god, that's insane." It could have been
That's
just, like
so interesting.
it could have been something that had to do with the J's maybe instead of fate. Um
Maybe that's the real reason we went to Broadway. It was the
Yeah.
power of the play.
Yeah. And for you, like, is there something that was in the Off-Broadway Ars Nova production that you wish could have made it to Broadway?
Yeah, I think what made the off-Broadway production really special is that it was a truly immersive experience. And so we were sort of enveloped within the audience. We were a part of the audience. The audience was a part of us. We were sharing the same spaces. We were very close to each other. And I loved that because it upped the ante a little bit. It raised the stakes. I think personally for me, I can't speak for
Mhm.
anyone else, but for me, it raised the stakes in terms of like really living the characters authentically and making it feel very sort of like real life in real time. um
Mhm.
but I also, understand the difficulties and the challenges of making that work within a Broadway landscape. So that's why I'm really excited to see Here Lies Love this summer, because I know
Yeah.
that they're doing it within a Broadway theater. And so that was the one aspect that I missed the most.
Mhm.
um, yeah.
Yeah, Jinyu is saying how he missed the song Starlight, and, like, all of the
One.
old songs that, never made it, like, which is I love hearing Helen's demo still on, like, SoundCloud because it's, like, going back to that time and just, like, hearing it, and then Jinyu doing the high notes that Abraham took over. Um
Yeah. Starlight slapped. Some people were because I think in the Ars Nova production we would ask like, "Oh, what did you guys think of that?" And many people were like, "No, that's not it." But I loved Starlight. I thought it was like a 90s dream.
Mhm.
It was so fabulously written and informed you so much of the group's culture and their history. And so I thought it was sort of a brilliant um snapshot into the history of the group and like sonically how they used to sound before they got really current. Uh,
Mhm.
I miss that song too. I'll agree with Gino on that. I did miss that song.
Yeah, and it's crazy how even like Haguk-nom was Saenamja, like it's so many differences. And you were there through everything. I mean, how did you not like switch lyrics that you might have known from years before when it was finally on Broadway?
Such a great question. You know, something I do when I'm learning any show is that if I like say for instance old lyrics would be popping up in the same melody of that song that had different lyrics in the past, which would really fuck up my brain, I would simply speak. I'm a big auditory learner, and so like my training heavily at Elon was like we like there was this class called performance and music theater, right? And you take it your sophomore year once you've had like a solid year of vocal training. And basically, the premise of the class is to approach every song through the text. And we would do something called phrasing from the lyric, in which you break down the text and you speak it as if it was a monologue. You speak it as if it was a scene. And
Mhm.
that was such formative training for me because now, when I'm in the city or if I'm trying to be off book for an audition that has like that's really wordy or something that I'm just really struggling with, I will record me speaking the lyrics in my voice memos and I will just listen to that over and over again. And because I'm such an auditory learner, that's how I learn the fastest. And so like if I did struggle with any lyrics that were sort of confusing me or sort of like reminded me of something and old muscle memory was kicking in and I would be struggling, I would just simply, you know, utilize my voice memo app and really just like repetition is our friend and
Mhm.
practice makes perfect but less than perfect, but it makes practice makes solid. I'll say that practice makes, you know, consistent. And so I would be able to do that to sort of like break away from anything that was sticking muscle memory wise that I had learned in the past. But of course things would change again, so then I would go in my voice memos, learn the new version and just move on. And so like I think part of it is yes repetition, but part of it's also remaining flexible and keeping an open mind and knowing that things can and will always change within a
Mhm.
preview process, reading process. That's what developmental workshops are geared towards. It's about finding what is in the best interest of the show, and things always change. And so staying on your toes while also utilizing, you know, current technology. There's also this app I love. It's called Line Learner. I don't know if you know this app, but
I'm gonna write it down.
my
Say
mentor,
that.
my mentor Keisha, told me about this app and it's so worth the money and it's you can basically record your lines and then your partner's lines and there are different options. You can either just hear your lines, you can either just hear their lines, you can hear both of your lines really slow, really fast, and it's an amazing app. And so I would also use that because you know you kill a lot of time on the train. Like you can either read, but I use that time to really just like I put in my noise canceling headphones and I just study because I think it's like the perfect time to sort of like get into gear, like get into the headspace for rehearsals or performances and just, you know, focus on what work needs to be done. And so, you know, having the text and also hearing it, I'm such a big learner that way, and that has greatly helped me. So
Yeah.
that's a technique I've used specifically for K-pop, but for many other things that has helped me sort of like gain um, I'm looking for the word that starts with R. Anyway, it's sort of helped me memorize.
Mm. Yeah, for any actors listening, just, download that app, make sure that you're learning your stuff because
I'm
like
not
you said,
sponsored; they're not paying me, but I will say it's a great app.
yeah, and preview process, I mean, in itself is insane. There were lines changing all the time. I heard orders of songs too, especially with the concert, which I had no idea about until much later, which is so interesting to like not end with Phoenix with a concert. I don't know, just like
Yeah.
it's in my brain.
Yeah, it was.
Um,
I think specifically for Fate, we didn't have too many changes line wise in the Broadway production, but we did get an entirely new script during the preview process, or maybe it was even the first preview, or it was near the first preview at Ars Nova. And so I felt very fortunate this time around at in the Broadway production at Circle in the Square that there weren't too many changes book wise. There were lots of cleaning and micro changes dance wise, but not too many seismic sort of like huge shifts towards what we originally did in the rehearsal space, at least for me and the boy group. I can't speak for
Mhm.
everyone else, but
Yeah, yeah. And do you have a favorite number that you performed on Broadway and a favorite costume? Because you had a lot of great ones, I have to say.
what did I love performing the most? Oh gosh. That's a great question. I have to think about that one. I think America was my favorite costume.
Mm,
I
mhm.
loved performing the concert.
Yeah.
America was like a hit cardio workout that it was just major. It would like kick my ass every day. There was no need to work out because America in itself was like the hardest 2 minute and 50-second workout. I think the whole song is like under 3 minutes, and
Yeah.
we would come off stage heaving, trying to catch our. But in terms of like my favorite numbers to perform, I think it was just the concert because the both numbers in the concert because it was sort of like the cathartic release of the show, and we were able to really have fun and interact with the audience, and you know, book wise that is current day, and so we would be able to like look at the audience and acknowledge them because during the show, you know, the book takes place and the scenes take place in a rehearsal setting, so we
Mhm.
had to act like the audience wasn't there, which was actually very difficult
Yeah.
because the audience understandably so was so vocal and wonderful and engaged that it was like, okay, we can't break because they're not actually here in regard to the book, but they will be here for the concert. So
Mhm.
well, my
Yeah.
American costume, I asked the dressers and Clint, and I was like, can I please keep it? They were like, no, it's being archived. And I was like,
Oh.
love it so much. And I've never felt so in alignment. Like I would be wearing that on down the street in New York. Like that is something I have like two styles, two aesthetic styles. Like I'm constantly in athleisure or I'm in clothes like America. Like that's just
Oh
like
my
my
god.
and like I've never felt so within my skin and sexy and like so comfortable in a costume than I did in America. And that all of that goes to Clint and Sophia because they created costumes that just were so unbelievably flattering and sexy and just shed light on Asian men's bodies that like we wouldn't be seeing otherwise in other Asian shows, specifically Korean shows. So like kudos to them.
Yeah, and especially with Joshua's line to me X, like we look sexy together, you know, that just that line in itself, every time I hear it, I just die like inside. It's so great.
It was the truth.
Yes, it is. No, and for you, like, I mean, you got a little mini scene in the show that none of the other Fate guys got to do, which you got to be the dance instructor for Mui. And so when did that begin? Because I know like with the arms, the hip, like that became such like an amazing moment in the show. And it was so funny. Oh my gosh. And like
And it was
when did you were approached to start playing him?
we were doing pre-Broadway workshops that were occurring right before the pandemic. There
Mm.
were two big workshops in 2019 and 18, right before the pandemic. Yes, because I had to do double duty for soft power
Oh
and
wow.
K-pop, which was I cannot believe that both productions let me do both because at the time when I was in soft power, I was in rehearsals for that. And I told my agents at the time, I was like, I really need to do both because I both projects are so important to me and we need to make this work.
Mhm.
And I remember proposing like I'll give soft power half of my day and I will give K-pop the other half of my day. And Teddy Bergman a couple years ago, he joked, he was like, we're currently experiencing the Cold War, the bitter Cold War over John Yu because there was so much negotiations happening between the two. But they eventually, everyone eventually, made it work. And I was splitting my time and doing double duty. I think during that time, I didn't have a day off for like over 3 weeks, so which is crazy. But I'm so glad I was able to do that because it was really important to me that I do the K-pop workshops because that was right after equity passed the 1% of profits after a show recoups negotiation, which basically meant that if you were a part of those workshops and if the show ever went to Broadway and recouped and, you know, made a profit over its original sort of like investment, you would get, you know, all that cast would get 1% of
Mm.
the investment. Sadly, that's not going to happen. But I was like, I have to be a part of this because I had been a part of so many workshops where that had not been passed,
Yeah.
and Broadway shows came into fruition. They recouped, and you know, I wasn't getting a 1% share of that, and so I was able to do both. That was a long-winded way of saying that in the 2019 workshop, Teddy approached me about a new scene with the choreographer that they were incorporating and asked if I was interested in doing it. I was like, yeah, sure. And so it just started. It came into fruition just from a workshop, and then I had just always been doing it from there. And every workshop and iteration of the show, Teddy would be like, "You want to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why not? Sounds great."
Yeah, and it's become such a moment. I mean, oh my gosh, like that entire scene, I could like watch it in my brain like over and over again because it's just so good. And like the book, and then like afterwards with Mui doing the dance, I'm like, I want to learn it now. Like, can they teach me, please?
I feel like we had to keep ourselves from breaking character because it was just so funny. Like we'd be in rehearsals with Teddy and he'd be like giving notes to the point where it'd be like, oh my gosh, if I do this, I'm gonna make myself laugh. And so like Luna's such a good trooper because she would like smile sometimes and I'm like, okay, I can't look at her because it was ridiculous, but it was coming from a place of like, I've had so many dance instructors that are so sincerely extra and passionate about what they do, but it's like so intense and it's so scary and funny that
Mhm.
like it came from a truthful place. And I think the only way to make a scene like that work, I think any making any comic scene work is to be super sincere and to be authentic in your intentions. Because I
Mhm.
think if it was played as like, haha, this is gonna be funny, it wouldn't have been funny. I think the only way for a scene like that to be funny and cringe is for it to be super sincere and for me to super have an investment and a true belief in what I'm doing and truly believe that this was the best thing to do for Mui's, you know, it was in her best interest to train her this way, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I mean this the line is like, I saw her eat a cake on her birthday.
No,
Like
it's
your heart just breaks for her, and like, but
the
you're laughing at the same time. And it's just
yeah,
like the emotional like turmoil.
sure.
And for you, like, since there is a lot of backstage time like between the numbers and stuff for Fate, did you have any backstage rituals like a high five or a like with a certain dresser, waving to someone across the stage, or something you had to do before you did the show?
I had lots of rituals. I would speak to, oh God, I would speak to everyone on audio from wardrobe to John the Carpenter, who we called Hot Sauce. I would have lots of rituals. I'd visit the stage management office. I would talk to the makeup team, the hair department. I would make my rounds. If I wasn't scrambling to get my makeup on because the makeup took forever no matter what, I never got a handle on it. And it always took forever. And I would have pounds of makeup on. But I would make my rounds. I would see everyone and I would just say hi and I would like, you know, goof off, high fives, talk to everyone. Um, pre-show. And then if I had time in between scenes, I would like specifically, excuse me, after I was changed into my choreographer costume, I would actually stay on the first level, which was, excuse me, I'm like, all these burps are coming up.
You're fine, you're good.
My electrolyte water. I would be able to stay on the first, the floor, which was like the theater level, and I would just hang out in the stage management office and, I would talk to the stage managers there who were working, and then I would just slowly, go towards the choreographer scene. And then after the choreographer scene, I would get changed, go upstairs, touch up my makeup, do Superstar, and then hang out in the dressing room for intermission. So yeah, there were lots of little rituals that made me happy and that I really miss.
Mhm. No, because I asked Abraham the same question. He just looked at me and said, "No, no have any reason." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay."
I don't know where he would be. Abraham would be doing something different almost every day, you know?
Yeah, it's like you just, you go do the show. It's like some people have their rituals and things they absolutely have to do, and then some people are just, there and then do the show.
Yeah,
Um,
some people's rituals were like, you know, arriving late to places, putting their scrambling to get their costumes on and then running on stage. So that's some people's rituals.
I think
And that's not even
it's
shade. That might be a read, but it's not shade. It was just like, and that's what I have fond memories of, because like those were the fun things that it was like, oh, there goes that person, and like here's my high five, and all that our stage manager is calling that same person who's always late to place. It was like, oh, my fond memories of being in theater.
Yeah, no, I think James told me it was him and Eddie who are always like the last ones.
It's true. I wasn't gonna name names, but that is the truth.
It's okay. James already outed himself on like in December, so it's been out there.
I love them both very much.
Yeah. And I remember during the panel, you talked about how K-pop allowed you to reclaim your Korean identity. And so can you talk about what your relationship was like before K-pop and how through 8 years it changed for you? And did being in a room full of Asian creatives change how you saw yourself as a theater artist?
Sure. I mean, it's such a layered question, so I'll do my best to answer in a succinct and sort of clear way. But I grew up in a predominantly white middle class area, and so even the only representation I saw within the arts and TV film was like Lucy Liu and Jackie Chan and Sandra Oh and Grey's Anatomy. But like me being Will Parker in my high school production of Oklahoma was like very controversial
Mm,
and made a lot of people very uncomfortable because I kissed another white girl on stage, and so like I remember that being such a big deal, and I remember at the time like that even motivating me further,
mhm.
like something about me occupying a predominantly white space and that making white people so upset and angry and uncomfortable that made me want to do it even more. And when I attended Elon, it was still predominantly white. Like I was probably one of like two or three Asian people in my class. And I might be the only Asian person now after graduation that's like pursuing a life in the arts. But what was your question?
Oh, just like how K-pop allowed you to reclaim.
Oh, help me reclaim my Korean identity. Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. So, yeah, growing up in a predominantly white area and then going to a predominantly white school, and then moving to the city. And, I still feel like to this day I am attending calls and I'm like, where are all of the other AAPI males? Like sometimes I look around and I'm like, it feels like I'm the only AAPI male there, which is unacceptable, and
Yeah.
there's no reason for that. And so I think in terms of how the show itself helped me reclaim my Korean identity, I've always made myself small in predominantly white spaces, from being made fun of, like bringing kim to lunch when I was young, to what happens when you enter and exist in these predominantly white spaces, that when you don't see people who look like you sort of like in my experience, shrink yourself and make yourself small, and you assimilate. And so what happens is that, like, through that assimilation process, you start to abandon and make invisible parts of yourself that, are truly who you are and are your culture. And so, like, being with K-pop throughout the years has not only helped me reclaim like my my love for my culture, but helped me reclaim like my desire to learn Korean, my appreciation for Korean art forms, for Korean food, for everything that is Korean, and to be unapologetically Korean in predominantly non-AAPI spaces, and to speak up.
Mm,
I think very uh Asian of us to sort of like not use our voices and to like suppress our voices and to sort of like be invisible, because I think the model minority myth does that, but
yeah.
that's exactly what it is. It's a myth. And so I think the show has also allowed me to sort of like reclaim my voice, not only just as like a Korean person, but as a Korean artist and as an artist who happens to be Korean.
Mhm.
And so like as Timmy X says in the show, like, what was his line? We contain multitudes. And so like I'm not just a Korean actor, but I consider myself an actor who happened to be Korean, and I can be all of these things. And so in many ways it's just helped me be more comfortable in my skin. It has helped me realize that my identity is beautiful and it is something that is unique and that it is something that should be celebrated and not something that I shouldn't be ashamed of, because in college specifically, you know, like it was so trite for all of my faculty professors to choose like predominantly Korean like AAPI shows and like to pigeonhole me into like things that were written for Asian people, when in reality, like I'm not a vocal type of Tui. Like Tui is not something that I would consider myself a right fit for in Miss Saigon, because it's just not
Mm-hmm.
consider. I don't fancy myself a casting director, but I know my instrument and that is not who I am. And so like at that point in college, there was only so much written for us, and like being pigeonholed and into those types of characters just felt exhausting, because it was like I would think to myself like, well, why do white people get such a vast spectrum of different types of diverse roles and opportunities, and I'm, you know, my one opportunity is Miss Saigon. I just refused to believe that that would be the one show that
Mm-hmm.
I would write for. And I don't mean to shit on the show, because like so many AAPI artists in the city have made a living and have fed themselves on that show. I was just interested in being able to come to New York and pursue opportunities to where I would be able to enter predominantly white spaces and be like, no, I should be considered for this because I'm the right vocal type and I happen to be Korean. And hopefully the creative team can look past, and not look past, but actually like celebrate my identity and be like, this adds diversity to our show, you know? And so
Yeah.
it's helped me in all realms, not only as an artist, but as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel the same way you do about not centering your Asian identity, but not making it the only thing about you. Like for
Yes.
me, you know, I'm a content creator, actor, whatever, but it's just weird when people only see you as one thing and they don't see you as everything else that you are in that identity. And so I'm just so happy that K-pop and just being in a space where you're celebrated was able to do so much for
I'll
you.
say this. I think the full extent of how the show has helped me be comfortable and fully realized in my own skin will come in waves. But the last thing that also comes to my head is that having my parents be able to see the show, who are Korean immigrants, and having them witness a Broadway show that was in Korean, it was so special, because a lot of the shows they've seen, they have a little bit of trouble understanding the English. And so they would be more you know, sort of enveloped in the song and the melody and the dances, but like for them to be able to like follow a storyline, it was a very big deal for me. And it was very it was just a dream come true for them to be able to see a show in their own culture being celebrated on Broadway. I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like my grandparents and my mom is actually an immigrant as well. Even though she is an English major, even though that's not like her first language, it's her second technically. But you know, it's such language is such a transformative thing when you see it. Cause like for me, I'm Taiwanese American, and so I specifically could not understand everything being said at K-pop on stage. But I think like the language kind of transcended that, and it just makes you appreciate things um appreciate it so much more because people can either share with you what it's about or what they're specifically saying, and it's not hard to follow at all. Like I'm just saying that for anyone listening, like K-pop having Korean in it is not hard to follow. I totally understood everything that was being said for the most part, except for like the little jokes. But yeah, it's such a unique thing to have a bilingual show because that's not really seen most times on Broadway, and it's so unique.
It's so unique. And thank you for saying that. We were hoping that, you know, at least from our vantage point, that context clues would allow the audience members to sort of like follow along. And so I'm so glad you were able to, you know, experience the joy and follow along with the show, even though you weren't, you know, privy to Korean and the
Mhm.
Korean.
Yeah, yeah, no, and like you said, the context clues are there, like they're very obvious in the script, like yeah, and so about all
Yes.
the all of the language stuff. And so when the review was released, you wrote a statement about the review. And so I just want to take time to say thank you so much, John, for saying that, for saying what needed to be said. And because K-pop did so much for Broadway, and it really deserves to be addressed with how much it really did for the Broadway community in kicking down those doors. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I was absolutely terrified
Hmm.
um posting that because I don't think I've ever posted a public statement on my Instagram. I like to keep it very, very diplomatic and very professional and work related only. Like I don't even have pictures of my family on there. Like it's just purely about work. But I
Hmm.
knew that in this specific circumstance, there really was nothing left to lose, you know? And so I thought it was so important for not just myself, but especially the younger cast members who did not feel comfortable speaking out, but felt very troubled by that review. It was very important for me as an older cast member to just speak truth to power and to speak the truth. Because for so long as AAPI people, we have kept our mouths shut and we just sort of keep our head down and just bear it. But I was so upset. I was so upset. And so I remember being on the train um the week prior to closing, and just I took out my notes app and I was fuming. And I was
Hmm.
fuming either before or after a show, and I was fuming, and I just started writing. And the way I write is that like I don't edit as I write. I spill everything out, and then I go back and I edit, and then I try to figure out, you know, what tone of voice is trying to be used and what it is I'm really trying to say. And here's the thing about my statement that I released. That was just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many issues with that article that I wanted to talk about, but I knew that the most pressing issue was the racism. But there was a lot of language that was so offensive used in that review that I wanted to be able to talk about, but I only had 10 slides, so I was like, okay, what is the most important and what is going to be the most important for me to talk about?
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you saying that because I had no idea what was going to come out of that. And I was so pleased to see, you know, my partner and I were like, oh my gosh, the extent to like what that statement, how many people was reaching really shocked me. I did not know I was going to receive a response like that. I
Mhm.
really thought people were going to respond to me and be like, you're just upset over a bad review, which was not the case at all. Like I welcome any, you know, any critique as long as it's proper critique and as long as it's not lazy critique.
Mhm.
And I believe firmly that that review was it was just lazy, and it didn't get the our that reviewer whom I won't even name.
No, you don't need
I
to.
don't believe that this reviewer came with the intent to really critique our show from an intelligent point of view. I think it was just, I don't think there's any other word for it other than lazy. That's truly how I felt. And so speaking truth to power on that was something that I really initially did not want to do, but as I mulled over it, I was like, okay, I actually have to say something. And I didn't expect it to receive such a positive response, but I'm so grateful it did. And for the entire creative team to repost it, like it was just sort of like, okay, I know that people feel not only feel this the same way as me, but understand where I'm coming from and also can see my points. And so that was really gratifying.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember seeing your statement and then Abraham's video and then Howard Ho's full annotation of the entire review. And just I was so angry because even for me, like for the most part, you know, I like you said earlier, you as an Asian kid, you assimilate. You do as a little Asian girl. I did try to do that a little bit. And then like even with the eyes thing, like okay, like I have like monolids. I think you might have the same like
Mhm.
makeup looks different on us or and it's not talked about. And so when someone says something like squint inducing and it's like very charged, it just it made me so angry, but also very thankful for everyone who was speaking out and saying like, okay, yeah, this isn't just like some statement, this is definitely has some power behind it. Like you said, and just yeah, everything you said in your statement what meant so much to me, just all
Thank
the way on the other side of the country.
you so much for saying that. I appreciate it.
Mhm. And I know for you, like, your family surprised you. I saw the video, of them surprising you at one of the final shows, and you made your speech and they were there. So, what did it feel like to have your family and your support system be there for one of the final shows?
As soon as I found out we were closing, I immediately booked my parents' tickets because they were originally planning on coming in the spring when it was warmer. I
Mm,
immediately booked their flights, got their tickets before the tickets got to be really expensive for the last couple of shows. And so my understanding is that my parents were just coming up. Little did I know that my partner Stephen was planning a surprise visit with my sister. And then I think they were that last week, my partner Steven was like, I'm thinking about changing their flights and blah, blah, blah. I was like, and I got so upset with him because I was like, why are you doing this? Like everything is set. I don't want to make a big thing. And he had to be so circumspect about it because he was playing the surprise. So I
yeah.
was just like, okay, you know what? I will, if you want to change it, then you can take care of it because I had so many other things going on. But I'm so grateful that I hate surprises. I'm not surprises, but I'm so grateful that Steven and my family organized that because when my sister walked through the door and then my brother walked through the door, it was just I literally had to do a double take. I was like, I cannot believe they are here. And this was like after releasing my statement against the New York Times Review. This was after receiving like the closing notice and like all of these things that were just so deeply devastating and sad to me. So to like have my entire family in my Brooklyn apartment in one place after having not been together for so long due to the pandemic was so special. And so then my partner Steven and I, we set up like folding tables in my like dining room that like went into our kitchen, and then we just ordered like there's a place down the street called Henko's. It's like takeout Vietnamese food. It's our favorite. And we just
Right.
ordered the feast and like we all sat together and ate. And then like my family saw the show and it was just so special to have them there. And my sisters were there like previously, like a week or two prior. So like they had come back a week later just for
Mhm.
closing. So it was unbelievably special to have my family here in New York City with me celebrating closing. And I could not have asked for a better way to close out this show that I had worked so hard on than to have my entire family sort of like I could feel their support. It was like their hands were on my back, like pushing me forward, because I was just like, oh my God, there's so much devastation this week, but almost also so much joy. And so
Mhm.
having them all there was truly a dream come true.
Yeah, that's so kind of your partner to do that for you and just make it something that you'll never forget, I'm sure, for the rest of your life. And can you talk about how you were feeling on the day of the final performance? Because it was very bittersweet. I know for me, I had only seen it the night before, and then I waited. I don't know if you know this, but I waited for 4 hours
I
um,
didn't know
on the
that.
day
I
on the
think I
day of
think I
the
remember
final.
you saying that at the panel.
Yeah, I waited for 4 hours outside just to, like, try and get a cancellation ticket, and I got it 30 minutes before, and I went in, I was, like, so thankful because I knew I wanted to be there for the panel especially. And so how did it feel for you to be performing in what didn't feel as much of, like, a Broadway show, but, like, an actual like, a kind of in between a Broadway show and a K-pop concert?
Oh, let me think back. I've blocked it all out. Last week, I'm a little bit of a slow processor in terms of life events. Like my whole family is sort of this way.
Mhm.
And so, like that entire last week, Abraham jokes with me all the time. He's like, when we got our closing notice, I was like, all right, this is the reality. So I was like slowly, little by little, starting that Tuesday before the Sunday of closing, I was just taking little like bags of stuff home so that when we came back, I wouldn't have to take like suitcases. And so I was like
Yeah,
very like reservedly like taking stuff home and be like, this is happening. I know it's devastating and blah blah blah. That Sunday of closing, that very last performance, I was like, I'm not gonna cry. I'm gonna do this. I walked into the building, I looked at the theater, and I began sobbing. It was an involuntary reaction just
yeah.
to like the buildup of that week, the devastation of our closing notice, all the pent up feelings of that New York Times review, all of my all of the hard work I had put in over the past 8 years over the show, and just all everything culminated into those tears. And so I took myself to my dressing room. I think Abraham was in the girls' dressing room and heard me. I was literally like heaving, sobbing, crying, uncontrollably. And so I just like I allowed it to pass. I allowed myself to experience it. He came and hugged me. I think Marina came into the dressing room too, and I was like, he was like, "This is the cry that should have happened on Tuesday." I was like, "I know, but I'm a little bit of a slow processor." And so for it to happen on that Sunday, I was like, "Okay." I experienced it. I let the emotions run through me, and then I put in some Lumify eye drops. I put on my makeup, and I did the show. And the show itself, it was so joyous. I there were moments when I felt like I was about to cry, but I was like, "Okay, focus, like stay in the scene and like do your job to the best of your ability, and don't get caught up in the emotion, but stay active, like stay active in the scenes." And then of course the concert was super emotional because that's not only a cathartic moment for the concert, but I think that in itself is such a celebration of Korean culture that it just felt incredibly emotional, and we were all crying ugly tears. And to be able to do the talk back, and then to see you stand up, and when you started crying, like everyone in the theater started crying with you. I was like so emotional. It was just a beautiful thing to see how our show had impacted so many people, and that talk back was so meaningful. I actually wish it could have lasted a little bit longer,
Yeah, me
but
too.
for you to be there, it was such a perfect way to close out like the show, and it became such a core memory for me, like seeing you, like it will always be a core memory seeing you standing there crying and like expressing how much the show moved you, and like how meaningful it was to you, because it was so visceral for all of us to be able to witness that from you. And so like thank you for your kind words, and thank you for like putting your heart on display for all of us to witness. It was so meaningful, and it was a very emotional day, and I drank a lot that evening. We all celebrated, we all went out, and you know um and I've seen many of the cast members post production like very frequently, so it's been really nice to know that like my community is, it's going to be a community forever.
Mhm.
But that's a long-winded way of saying it was a very, very emotional, cathartic end to the show.
Yeah, yeah. I think you put it into words perfectly. I mean, oh my gosh, I could cry right now, but
No, I'm not going to. I could too.
like hold it in. Yeah, and for you, like to be up there with David, Helen, Hansel, Pun, and Kimmy, like when were you approached for to do the panel since you are the original cast member? And to be there with David, who you worked on Soft Power, which I've actually seen Soft Power when I was in LA. And that show's great too. Um but just like when did they approach you, and what was the process of preparing for that?
Sure. So it was actually really last minute. When I found out there would be an AAPI talkback with David, I'd worked with David, DHH as we call him, at at the public, excuse me, in Soft Power. And so I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. So I actually asked if I could moderate it. I didn't know that Kimmy was moderating at the time, but they came back and they were like, "We have a moderator, but would you like to be a part of the panel?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that would be great." And so I think being a part of the panel allowed me to also have, that's going to be such a core memory for me too, like just to have like this way of closing out the show in a way where it was on my terms, and like I was able to express my feelings on matters that were very important to me. And so Parn's office was, the producers were gracious enough to allow me to be a part of it, and to be a part of such an iconic panel of API like creative makers in our industry was like mind blowing. Like I will never forget that I was like literally sitting next to DHH as he was sharing like his thoughts on the abrupt closing of our show and how monumental the show was, and like it's something I will never forget.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who has not seen the panel, it is on my YouTube at Broadway underscore
Good.
corner.
Oh, great. I think a lot of people have been asking about where a full recording of it, so this is
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yes. No, I have the full thing uploaded in HD quality.
Ooh,
You know,
what
I
kind
gotta
of camera
document
what kind
it.
of camera did you use?
My phone.
Oh, nice. All right,
Yep,
come
I
on,
was
iPhone.
yeah, in the front, so it's like it's very, very good, and I actually rewatched it yesterday, just in preparation for this. And to kind of wrap this up, I mean, what is your advice for young Asian kids who want to pursue performing and who want to be in shows like K-pop?
Oh, that's a really great question. I want to make sure I answer this articulately. What is my uh advice to them?
Yes, yes.
Mhm. If this is what you really want to do, I'm going to speak to my young APR artists directly. If this is what you really want to do, prepare for a long road ahead. Find a community whom you trust that will hold space for you when you are down, when you do not feel like doing this anymore. Um, Save your money before moving to New York City. It will having a nest before you move here financially will alleviate, in my opinion, 90% of the sort of like mental struggles of what it means to be here. So do whatever you can to save every ounce of money before you get here. If it means like taking a cruise job or taking some sort of gig that pays really well before you move here, just do it. Make sure you have some sort of, whatever nest you can have before moving here. Network, and by network I mean take classes, get to know people, do not be shy, ask for what you need, find a team of people who represent you that will advocate for you, and I'm talking agents. Do not be afraid to be honest with your agents. Find an agency that you can be open and honest with. Talk to other actors about what works for them and what has worked for them. And know that everyone's path looks differently. So no matter how much advice you get, you are always going to be navigating a path that is your own because no path looks the same.
Mhm.
You can pick up different behaviors and habits that are in alignment with sort of maybe other people who fit the same type, but you will never be able to get clear direction on how to navigate your path because it's your path. So like take it one step at a time, take it one day at a time. It's always one foot in front of the other and always exercise your locus of control, right? Like do not stress about anything that is outside of your control. What we have within our control is showing up prepared. Oh God, who told me this? And for when I did Snow and Midsummer last summer, be passionate, be prepared, be there were three P's. I'm forgetting now, but it's obviously and obviously hasn't stuck because I would know them. But it's like be prepared, be passionate, and be whatever. But you
Present?
know,
Is
be
it
present. Yes, that's the one.
present? Yeah.
And I love that saying because those three P's are all things that are within your control. You do not have control over what you are going to get cast in, over what school you're going to get into. You don't have control over any of that. So exercise what is within your locus of control and then release the rest. And always work on being a better artist. Take classes, study, and just do your best. I think growing up, I had amazing parents, very atypical Asian parents who always, instead of pressuring me to be the best, they always pressured me always to do my best. And I think that was so radical for me because anything that I attempted to do, it was always the barometer of success was always about how much did I show up and was I courageous enough to do it and do my best. And so, as Brene Brown, there's a quote that I live by. It's like you show up, you let yourself be seen, and you practice courage. And that is the barometer for living a life well lived, like that is all you can ask for. And anything that happens on top of that is just icing on the cake.
Mhm.
My advice to young artists, if this is really what you want to do, and first really ask yourself, is this what you want to do? And if you can think of anything else that you're passionate about and doing and you'd rather do it, you should probably do that because this should be the thing that you are doing if there is nothing else you can do. But in that same vein, when it becomes your business, find other hobbies. I got the best piece of advice from Rachel Hoffman at Telsey when I was in my senior year at Elon and I was auditioning. And I was so in my head because when I sang for Rachel, I think one of the faculty professors told Rachel, like, oh, I think she told the faculty professors, oh, like he's so great, like he's so castable. And one of my professors was like, oh, he's going to do Teach for America after school. And I like freaked out because I thought like this would mean like, oh my God, she's never going to cast me anything because she knows that I'm not going into the business right after. She wrote me the sweetest email that I actually like have printed out at that time that basically said like, I want to let you know that I don't think any less of you. I actually think more of you that you were doing TFA post grad because so many people in our business have an unhealthy obsession with their craft and they are not able to separate themselves from what they do. So, and she was like, and I want to let you know as a casting director, if you're right for a role, you'll always be called in for it. And that's that. And that was so inspiring to me because that sort of set the tone for how I approached the business from a very young age. And I was never afraid to pursue other things because I always knew that number one, New York will always be here. The business will always be here. And
Mhm.
there's time to pursue other things. And I never looked back. I think Teach for America was such a formative time for me, and it developed such grit and character for me to be able to do what I do now and move to the city that I don't think I would have had otherwise. And so to hear that from such you know, a respected person in our industry that like what you do is great and what we do is great, but you also have to have healthy boundaries around it. And you also have to like, know when it's okay to like let go a little bit and enjoy your life.
Mhm.
That was so important for me to hear. And I love telling young actors that it's like, do not obsess over it. Like, do what you can, work hard and then release the rest and enjoy it a little bit more. I think like young artists are so like in their heads and especially artists my age too. Like there are many artists who are still in their heads. And I think it's helpful to hear sometimes like do your best, work your ass off, do your best, fucking slay the audition, be fucking fierce, and then release the rest because it's not within your control over what happens.
Mhm.
If you can lay your head on your pillow at night and say like I did my best, then that's a life well lived. So like, have healthy boundaries around the business, find friends outside of the business. That's a great thing. If you have a church community, go to church. If you have a sewing community, go to sewing classes. If you like to take pottery classes, like do that. Like immerse yourself in things other than acting that allow you to live the human experience because that will only enrich you as an actor to reflect the human condition. Because when you reflect the human condition, it's not just about acting. You have to live your life, you have to go out and experience it, and you have to have fun, and you have to experience heartbreak, and you have to experience all of these things that make us human. And I do believe that all of those things make you a better actor.
Mhm.
And it's just about you having those lived experiences and then tapping into them as an actor and actually using them in a way where, it can move you forward and propel you forward. Um, so yeah, in a succinct way, work hard, play hard, be nice. Um, don't be an asshole. Like everyone you meet, like like whether they are a server or whether they are someone in casting, like just be a good person, be a nice person, don't be an asshole, and like just work hard and release the rest and like have fun
Mhm.
and take it all in, relax a little bit. Don't be, I wish someone would have told me as I was hitting the pavement, when I was like 23, 24, 25, like you can relax just a little bit. You don't have to be so high strung. Like yes, like be fierce and slay those auditions, but also like you can just relax a little bit, and you can have fun.
Yeah, it's like be a person. Don't be just an actor.
Uh, yeah, because I think people can smell that the moment you walk into a room, right? And I think as I've gotten older, I gravitate much more towards people who are just down to earth,
Mhm.
and are approachable and who are not so like business obsessed, intense, like super musical theater. Like that can be a lot to be around, and it can be a lot because like our business is already so much. Like I always say this to people, like theater as an art process is inherently hard.
Yeah.
So you don't want to become a person who makes that process harder. And I've worked with many people in our business who have made the process harder. And it sucks because like you can be a much nicer person who doesn't have to make that process harder, but unfortunately, like, as you work, you just will encounter a lot of people who are either mean-spirited or who go through different life struggles that just make them that way. But all I know is that like if you can do anything to make the process easier and more tolerable for other people by just being kind and showing kindness, then do that. Because what we do is not easy, and you have to show love to each other, and you have to be all about love and kindness, and like just show grace to people.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great advice. So many good points in there.
Thank you.
And to just, kind of finish up, like, how can everyone, listening, follow you, support you on either social media or just in your projects? Like, how can we continue to support you?
That's such a sweet question. I don't know. That's a great I think if people are interested, I'm not a huge the T, here's the T. I'm not a huge social media person. I'm horrible at texting. I'm never really on my phone because I have such commitment to like living my life presently that like I'm horrible even at texting. I'm even more horrible at social media. I think I have a TikTok, but I don't even use it because I don't even know how to use it. So like people are interested, my website is mrjohnyu.com, which I actually update now that I know how to use my website. Shout out to Audrey Cardwell who designed it, who's also an amazing actress, but she's also an amazing coder and like is amazing with computer tech and like web tech. Is web tech a thing?
I don't
She
know.
designed my website this year on Squarespace. So like I update my website very frequently. So if people are interested in what projects I have coming up, I always update that. And then my social media is purely business related. So anything that I have going on, I will always update on there. But how can you support me? I think you can support me by supporting other young AAPI artists and donating to organizations that support AAPI works and by supporting AAPI stories. And Ashley and I will come up with many different nonprofits and organizations that people can donate to. That would be the best way to support me is
Mhm.
by supporting young artists and young playwrights and by supporting API stories that are trying to find platforms to be told in the city.
Yeah, by helping them, we're gonna help all of us, in turn. And
Yes.
so, John, just thank you so much. I've been so looking forward to just chatting with you, and you're such a
You.
special human, and I just everything you do is so great. I mean, also, we forgot to mention, the pink coat that you wear during the concert. Like,
I wanted to keep it so
chose that
bad.
for you, whoever chose that for you, Sophia and Clint, like, they're incredible. I just had to put that out there. Um,
Icon, because it was an iconic moment. I couldn't believe they let me wear that and wear the hood on stage.
Gosh, yeah.
Like to enter with the hood, I did it once and Teddy was like, "You're doing that forever, right?" I was like, "Oh, I was just trying that." He was like, "No, you're keeping it." I was like, "Great."
Yeah, yeah, no, that whole moment and just everything you did in K-pop just meant so much to me, meant so much to everyone, who loves the craft and who loves shows like K-pop that are doing so much for the Broadway community. We're breaking down those barriers so that someday people will have it a little easier than we do right now.
And listen, Ashley, I mean this sincerely. I know what you're going through right now with the application process and auditioning process is extremely challenging, is full of tribulation. So do not hesitate to reach out and ask me any questions. If you need help with audition material, like just don't hesitate to reach out to the API community, like anyone, anyone. And I know that any of us would be willing to help. And that goes out to all young API artists. Like, please reach out if you guys need help. Just always, ask for what you need. And like, specifically you, I know that you're going through a very sort of like tough process right now with all that. So don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope I get to see you in the city soon. I hope you find opportunities to be able to come here and to exercise your passions of podcasting and being, a performer and all of that. I hope all of your dreams come true. And I hope all of us can support that. So I
Well,
look
thank
forward to seeing
you.
you.
And thank you to everyone who's listening. I am so happy that I'm able to do this, whenever I can, just putting out episodes to make people happy. And I hope, this content really gives value to your life. And so thank you, John, for being on here. Make sure to follow me at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha and Broadway_corner on Instagram. And make sure to follow John at, I believe it's Mr. John
Mhm.
Yee.
MRJOHNYI, yeah.
Yeah, make sure to follow John on anything, even that secret TikTok. I don't know.
I know I need to, maybe you can help me because I'm like, I don't know how to do this.
I told Patrick like social media lessons with Ashley.
I'll sign up. I will
Yeah,
totally sign
yeah.
up. What's
Yeah.
your cash
Thank
app?
you.
Let's
Thank
start
you
it.
to everyone who's listening.
Thank you
Yay.
guys.
You've been listening to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.